So taking a step back and looking at 2022, what we can see, one of the major key items that happened during 2022 was inflation. We've seen inflation at rates that we have previously not seen in such a long time. The idea that back in November's numbers that were reported in December had our 12-month inflation up over 7.1%. So just think about that. Your money is losing value at 7.1% per year if it's sitting in a zero interest earning account. That's what inflation means. That's why it's so important for you to start to understand what kinds of things are going on. So what we're going to talk about today is how inflation impacts the cost of goods sold and what that really means to you. One of the areas that was most impacted was manufacturing, right? And manufacturing uses these different costs of goods sold. Part of the challenge was a supply chain disruption that was dating back to the pandemic that kind of worked its way through, but we're still seeing those issues, right? Because there's labor shortage, there's all sorts of things that are causing these inflationary pressures. If we look at no further than just a car dealership, right? Car dealership, how they make money, they're selling their cars, they're fixing cars. But what were they doing when the supply chain was disrupted? They took your regular vehicle where you'd have an MSRP on the sticker, right? Nobody wants to pay sticker price. Everybody always wanted to pay under sticker. Well, during this supply chain disruption, they were adding extra money onto the vehicle so that they would make the sales and their numbers weren't impacted. But what did that do? That made that vehicle more expensive for you, hence the inflationary pressure that was put on just from a supply chain disruption. The other thing that's happening in the vehicle market is there's a lot of cars out there that used to have different options, different packages, but they can't get the parts to make those options happen. So you're seeing, cars that used to have different luxury items in them that now they don't have those same luxury items, but those cars are still the same price or more. So think about that as you start to step into these different things. So when we talk about cost of goods sold, it's all of those different pieces that come in to make these goods that make this one product, and what is the cost of those, and that helps inflate those prices. So there's also other costs of goods sold. If you think about housing, right? There was a short-term supply issue with lumber, and lumber skyrocketed, went through the roof. Sheets of plywood were 3 times the price where they were. That had to work its way through the system as well. And think about the contractors that were bidding out these home prices, thinking that wood would cost a certain amount of money, and now wood's 2 or 3 times as much. Well, what does that do? That bumps up the prices of everything. So these were things that were happening all along before the inflation actually even worked its way into the system. Where you really saw it is at the gas pump or at the food store, right? The cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of heating your home, those things alone are really, really impactful to the average person. It takes away the money that you would have to spend on luxury items or spend on things that are fun, or really, it just takes away your ability to save. We've seen inflation cut savings rates throughout the nation, where we used to have a savings surplus even just as short as 2 years ago. Now that savings is a deficit. So there's a lot of things that inflation does that gets lost because all economists want to talk about is, oh, the number's rising this much, or this happened, this much. None of that really means anything unless you take a look at what it's doing to your dollars, right? So again, think about money that you have sitting in the bank, right? If you had $100,000 sitting in the bank, or let's just make it easy. If you had $100 sitting in the bank and you lost 7.1%, you now have the same buying power that $100 had just 12 months ago, now has the buying power of $92.90, right? So think about that as you start to see, like, well, what does inflation really mean for me? The question you have to be asking yourself is, well, what can I do to overcome inflationary pressures in my own life? I think there's a number of different things that you can do. One is, if you're working a 9-to-5 job, you need to start looking at other ways to diversify or make income, right? Because if you have only one source of income and you're dependent on that, well, if If it's the same amount of money every single week that comes in, but now the cost of everything is that much more, you're getting squeezed. And that's what most of the middle class is feeling. That's most of what's going on today. So if you start to add other avenues that you can make income, maybe it's a little side hustle, maybe it's a little project, maybe it's helping somebody out here. Well, all of a sudden now those diversified income streams will start to help you stave off inflationary pressure, right? Because it's going to be there regardless. So now you have to talk about, well, how can I make more money to overcome that? The second thing you want to look at is where are you storing your dollars? If we look at, savings accounts, even though interest rates are climbing, savings accounts rates that they're paying interest are very, very small, and they're not keeping up with inflation. You have some bonds, government bonds, that may help you offset inflation, right? So that's an avenue where you could be putting some dollars. There's the stock market, but look at the stock market over the past year. Over the past year, it's been down. So are you really beating inflation in the stock market? Not in the short term, at least not right now, right? So some of the things that conventionally people looked at, savings accounts and investment accounts, might not have been doing so well. So it's looking at those other avenues, government bonds. Look at life insurance. This is a perfect place for you to maybe store money depending on your given situation, because that will help offset inflation, because there's a constant compounding growth, assuming you put together the right type of plan. And I'm not talking about term life insurance. So these are things that you should be looking at in your own life for ways to beat inflation, because I'm sorry, but right now, it doesn't look like inflation is going anywhere. And that is a real challenge for a lot of people. So we got to start looking at what can we do to get past that. If you're in a position where you are able to save money and you're like, hey, look, I got crushed in the stock market, or I got crushed in Bitcoin, or, I just need an idea of what I can do. Click in the description box below. One of the team members from Epic will sit down, kind of walk you through our success process. They'll get to learn about a lot about you, the things that you're looking to accomplish, and maybe help you look at different avenues and different ideas so you can start to put together that game plan as you step into 2023. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and we'll see you on the next video.